L. Ernst de Locke, born June 19th, 1927 in Vorbeyen and died in a hospital in August 1944. Fritz Lammers, born May 3rd, 1915 in Cleve and fell March 17th, 1945 in Czechoslovakia. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. 2 Corinthians 5:1. Wilhelm Lammers, born January 21st, 1920 in Cleve, and fell on July 29th, 1941. Wilhelm was an Oberschütze in the 9th Company of Infantry Regiment 167, part of the 86th Infantry Division. He was killed by multiple gunshot wounds to the extremities and the left shoulder, dying in a field hospital in Plock, Belarus. 2 other members of the company served in the 86th Infantry Division. Hermann Bartels was a member of Grenadier Regiment 216 and would be killed by a gunshot to the head at Nevye, Russia, on November 26, 1942. Johann Duif was a member of the 4th Company of Grenadier Regiment 167 and would die the day before Hermann, also from a hit to the head. Adrianus Franciscus von Lent, born May 10, 1923 in Eindhoven and fell January 3, 1944 on the Mediterranean coast. Hender Leon Antonius von Lent, born January 18, 1898 in Cleve and fell at an unknown time and place. Matthias von Lent, born January 11, 1925 in Feldhoven and fell at an unknown time and place. Fritz Lesel, born November 16, 1921 in Heidelberg and fell on September 17, 1944. Josef Leutz, born January 3, 1918 in Hau and fell February 16, 1944 in Pleskau. Josef was an Obergefreiter in the 6th Company of Army Nachrichten Regiment 520 of the 18th Army. He was wounded by shrapnel to his extremities on February 14th, dying 2 days later. He is buried in the Sebesh Military Cemetery, Block 14, Row 7, Grave 931. Hermann von Leer, born September 4th, 1923 in Neuterden and fell September 30th, 1942 in Latagasi. Heinrich Linders, born October 28, 1907 in Matterborn and fell October 7, 1944 in a bombing raid. Several other factory workers were killed in the same raid, including Heinrich Brauers, Gerhard Clausen, Walter Clausen, Johann von der Essen, Theodor Gorsen, and Fritz Kanders. Peter Lutz, born on October 1, 1924 in Matterborn and fell on December 5, 1943. Peter was a grenadier in the 5th Company of Grenadier Regiment 123, part of the 50th Infantry Division. He was killed by an artillery shot to the head near Bolgonik, Ukraine. Alfred Luck, born on March 25, 1920 in Matterborn and fell August 9, 1943 in Latagasi. Alfred was an Unteroffizier in the Staff Company of Fusilier Regiment 68, part of the 23rd Infantry Division. He was killed by an artillery shot to the chest on July 22, 1943, not August 9th, 500 meters southwest of Torfjanik, 4 kilometers north of Maga, near Leningrad. This Fusilier Regiment bore the honors of an early unit, Fusilier Regiment Prince Heinrich of Prussia, No. 35, formerly of the Army of Brandenburg. He is buried in the Sologabovka Military Cemetery, Block 4, Row 24, Grave 2344. Jacob Luck, born April 8, 1917 in Cleve and fell August 30, 1941. Jacob was a Gefreiter in the 6th Company of Infantry Regiment 240, part of the 106th Infantry Division. Around the time he was killed, it appears his regiment was resting in the rear. He took shrapnel to multiple areas of his body, including his rear and right thigh. He would die in Field Hospital 106 motorized. I have a death card for another member of the 106th Infantry Division, Hans Backhaus. He was a Gefreiter in Company 5, part of the 241st Infantry Regiment, and was killed by a gunshot to the left hip on April 25, 1942, in Lviv. Heinz Locke, born January 27, 1925 in Cleve, and fell February 21, 1945 in Kurland. Heinz was a Schütze and was killed near Prekulen. Arnold Lubeck, born April 19, 1910 in Matterborn, and fell on June 26, 1944. Hans Lubeck, born December 20th, 1923 in Cleve, and fell July 20th, 1944 in the East. Hans was an Obergefreiter in Divisional Fusilier Battalion 21L. He was killed by a gunshot to the head at Soboye, 18 kilometers north of Ostrov. Erich Ludwig, born November 29, 1921 in Cleve, and fell May 30th, 1943, in the east. Erich was a Gefreiter in the 5th Company of Jaeger Regiment 738, part of the 118th Jaeger Division. He was killed by a gunshot to the lung, 3 kilometers south of Krivo, Bosnia. I have a death card for another member of this unit. Johann Opperer was a Gefreiter in the Panzerjäger Company of Jaeger Regiment 738 and was killed by a gunshot to the head in Vianar, Serbia, on May 24, 1943, only 6 days before Erich. M. Fritz Mawson, born August 3, 1890 in Köln, and fell on May 4, 1945. Fritz served as a soldier and is buried in the Berlin-Spandau Military Cemetery. As his date of death is 2 days after the end of the battle, he may have died of his wounds or been executed. Hans Mawson, born March 8, 1922 in Cleve, and fell September 26, 1944. Johann Marx, born December 1, 1905 in Cleve, and fell August 19, 1942 in the east. Johann was a Gefreiter in the 1st Company of Luftwaffe Bau Battalion 30-4. He was killed by an artillery shot at the Staraya airfield. The town was occupied by the Germans from 1941 to 1944. Wilhelm Marx, born June 28, 1907 in Cleve, and fell June 27, 1944 in the east. Wilhelm was an Obergefreiter and was killed by Medvedovke, Ukraine. Werner Mattei, born February 14, 1920 in Cleve, and died October 15, 1944 in a hospital from his wounds. Friedrich Merling, born December 4, 1921 in Cleve, and fell July 18, 1943 in the east. Friedrich was an Unterscharführer in the 1st Company of SS Panzergrenadier Regiment Theodor Eicke, part of SS Panzergrenadier Division Totenkopf. He was killed by an artillery shot to the extremities, legs, and left upper arm in Kresnoye, 50 kilometers north of Belgorod. He was killed shortly after the conclusion of Operation Citadel, in which Totenkopf would be deployed in combat alongside SS Das Reich and Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. Erich Arntz, another member of the Totenkopf division, was killed by a headshot 4 months earlier in Ukraine while serving with SS Panzergrenadier Regiment 3, Totenkopf. Alois Mayorkes, born December 6, 1923 in Rindern, and fell July 23, 1944 in the east. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. 2 Timothy 4:7. Friedrich Meyer, born May 20th, 1924 in Pfalzdorf, and fell July 25th, 1943. Friedrich was a grenadier in the 14th Company of Grenadier Regiment 408, part of the 121st Infantry Division. He was killed by an artillery shot to his head and chest in Mostolovo, near Volkov. Gerhard Meyer, born July 20th, 1872 in Moers, and fell February 7th, 1945 in an air raid. He was buried in a civilian grave in Cleve. Based on the photo, it is clear he is a member of the Luftschutz. Several other workers were killed in the same raid, including Anton Holtermans and Josephine Konders. Wilhelm Michels, born August 6, 1900 in Matterborn, and fell August 30th, 1943. Wilhelm was a Gefreiter in the 11th Company of Sicherung Regiment 613, part of the 203rd Sicherung Division. He was killed by a machine gun burst to the head and chest 4 kilometers west of Malaiki in the area near Rahakov, Belarus. Ernst Mitzdorfer, born April 15, 1910 in Cleve, and fell October 19, 1941. Ernst was a Gefreiter in the 3rd Company of Infantry Regiment 474, part of the 254th Infantry Division. He was wounded by a headshot, dying in a hospital in Königsberg. Another worker at the factory, Aloy Barton, served in the same regiment in the 3rd Company. He would be killed by a headshot in Kalilovo, Russia, on June 1, 1943. Johann Mulder, born January 19, 1926 in Cleve, and fell May 4, 1945 in Berlin. Emil Mulders, born November 3, 1913 in Cleve, and fell in 1944. Karl Mulder, born September 6, 1911 in Hasselt, and fell August 18, 1942 in the east. Karl was a Gefreiter in the 8th Company of Infantry Regiment 328, part of the 227th Infantry Division. The 8th Company was a machine gun company, and Karl would be killed by shrapnel from a mine 5 kilometers north of Mostolovo in the Leningrad area. He is most likely buried in the unknown soldiers section of the Sologabovka cemetery. Two other factory workers who served in this division were Gerhard Bruckmann and Wilhelm von Eck. Gerhard was a grenadier in the 8th Company of Grenadier Regiment 366 and was killed by a gunshot to the chest on January 26, 1944, Yelitsa-Vetino, Russia. Wilhelm was a Gefreiter in Company 13 of the 328th Grenadier Regiment and was killed by shrapnel in Schlisselburg, Russia, on January 12, 1943. Werner Munkenbach, born October 29, 1926 in Gosch and fell December 24, 1944. Werner was a grenadier and is buried in the Andely Military Cemetery in France. Block 34, Row 2, Grave 117. Heinrich Muskes, born January 23, 1920 in Matterborn and fell August 25, 1944. Heinrich was an Unteroffizier and is buried in the Isselstein Military Cemetery in the Netherlands. Block AZ, Row 11, Grave 274.